All right, let's jump right in. Because, something huge is going on in the financial world. It's this quiet shift, but it's got some really loud consequences. And what we're seeing is central banks all over the globe making a move, a really historic one. And it all boils down to this one big question. Why is everyone suddenly dumping the US dollar?
And if you want to get a sense of just how big this is, all you have to do is look at the price of gold. I mean, it is smashing records. We're talking an incredible $3,625 an ounce. Now, this isn't just some random market blip, right? This is a signal. It's telling us that the world's biggest money managers are sprinting towards what they believe is the only truly safe place to park their cash.
And this is the real kicker. For the first time since 1996, central banks now hold more gold than they do U.S. Treasury bonds. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. For decades, U.S. government debt was the gold standard. It was the safest asset you could own, period. And now, gold just took its crown.
So that leads us right back to the central mystery here. What is going on? What's driving this huge crisis of confidence? I mean, these are super cautious, conservative institutions we're talking about. Why are they making such a massive shift away from the dollar? Well, it's complicated, but that's exactly what we're here to break down.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We've seen the record high gold prices. We're going to look at this crisis of confidence, dig into the domestic hurdles and the political stuff, see how America's alliances are fraying, and then get to that big $4,000 question. All right, so let's get into the real reason behind this market shift. The key thing to understand is that this isn't just about spreadsheets and market data. Nope. This is all about perception. It's about trust. The whole world is watching the US right now, and frankly, what they're seeing is making them pretty nervous. And look, this isn't just some random person on the internet saying this. You've got Ray Dalio, the guy who founded one of the biggest hedge funds on the planet, saying things like, it's a dictatorship era. He's saying Trump is ignoring the law. When a guy like that starts making comparisons to the 1930s, you better believe the people holding the world's money sit up and pay attention. He's voicing a very real fear that the core of U.S. stability, the rule of law itself, is on shaky ground.
So this isn't just a vague feeling of anxiety. This loss of confidence is tied to a series of 7 very specific, very real hurdles. Each one, on its own, is a problem. But together, they threaten to destabilize the U.S. and send shockwaves through the entire global economy. Okay, so let's dig into these hurdles, starting with the challenges at home, the economic and legal ones. Hurdle number 1, a massive budget showdown. You've got the administration wanting to spend a ton of money while at the same time demanding that the Fed cut interest rates. It's a real conflict, and it's got over 600 economists, including Nobel laureates, waving red flags. The big risk here? If they can't make a deal by the September 30th deadline, we could be looking at a government shutdown or, even worse, a potential U.S. default. All right, hurdle number 2, the tariff war is now being fought in the courts. A key appellate court has already said, hey, these tariffs are illegal. Now everyone's waiting on the Supreme Court, but that decision could be 6 months away, maybe more. And in the meantime, the current tariffs could just be put on hold, which would basically cripple one of the administration's main policy tools.
But don't think that's the end of it. The administration already has a plan B, C, D, and E ready to go. They're digging up a bunch of old, obscure trade laws that let them do all sorts of things. Slap on tariffs for trade deficits, for national security, you name it. This shows they are dead set on continuing the trade war no matter what the courts say. And for global markets, that just adds a whole new level of what happens next. Hurdle number 3 is this idea of state capitalism. So what is that? It's basically when the government starts buying into private companies like Intel to try and direct the economy. It's a huge departure from traditional free market ideas, and you guessed it, this policy is also getting challenged in court because it really shakes up the foundation of the U.S. economic system. Okay, so you've got these economic and legal battles raging, and at the exact same time, there's a huge political shakeup happening, creating instability from within the system itself. So hurdle 4 is a fundamental change in how the government is staffed. For a long time, the U.S. has used a merit system, right? You get a job based on your experience. The new approach is more of a spoil system, where loyalty is what matters most. The big concern here is that you're trading deep institutional knowledge for political appointees, and that can lead to a government that's way more disruptive, more partisan, and frankly, a lot less predictable. Hurdle number 5 gets into some very sensitive territory, the Epstein files. We're talking about a massive 30,000-page report. Its release is creating pressure from both sides of the aisle for a serious investigation. This whole thing raises huge questions about moral authority and creates a really serious personal vulnerability, especially with victims planning to hold a press conference this week.
Then you have hurdle number 6, a major clash between federal power and the states. Federal troops are being deployed to Democratic-leaning states like California, New York, and Illinois. The stated reason is to crack down on illegal immigration. But the accusation from critics is that this is really a political move, a way to consolidate power and go after opponents, which just makes the divisions within the country even deeper.
Okay, so that's the picture at home. Now let's zoom out and look at the final hurdle, which has to do with how all of this is playing out on the world stage. And this is hurdle number 7. The US is essentially abandoning its traditional alliances. We're seeing a pullback from historic commitments like NATO, threats to withdraw from the UN, and a weakening of global bodies like the WTO and IMF. And the real irony here is that the Make America Great Again goal is being pursued by dismantling the very international institutions that America built and which have been the foundation of its global power for decades.
And when you put it all on a timeline, you really see what's happening. These are not separate, isolated problems. It's a cascade. You've got the court ruling against tariffs in Q2. Then in Q3, you get these heated Senate confirmation hearings, a failed summit with Putin, and the whole thing is barreling towards a potential government shutdown at the end of the quarter. It's basically a perfect storm of uncertainty, and that is what has global investors so on edge.
Okay, so the big question. Let's tie all of this back to where we began, the money. How does all this political chaos actually affect the global economy and the value of your dollar?
Well, just take a look at the dollar index. It's basically a scorecard for the dollar's strength against other currencies. Before all this kicked off, it was sitting at 110. Today, it's down around 98. That is a 13% drop. And that doesn't happen by accident. That is a direct result of the world's faith in the US dollar taking a major hit. So here's the bottom line. When you add up all 7 of these hurdles, what you get is a serious fundamental loss of confidence. That title the US dollar has held for so long, the world's safest place to put your money, well, that title is now seriously at risk.
And if the US can't steer its way through the storm, the forecasts are pretty startling. Some analysts are saying we could see gold hit $4,000 an ounce. And that number, it's more than just a price. It represents a world desperately looking for a safe harbor, an alternative to a US system that they're just not so sure about anymore. But, nothing is set in stone, and that leaves us with one final fascinating question. What if it all works? What if the administration successfully navigates every single one of these hurdles? Could this high-stakes strategy actually lead to a US dollar that's stronger than it's ever been? Now that is the real trillion-dollar question, isn't it?